Over the years, we've heard countless stories about the Trump family, but one daughter has remained almost completely silent, Tiffany Trump. Unlike her siblings, she kept herself far away from the storm of politics, choosing a quieter life, at least until now. Recently, Tiffany has spoken out about her father, Donald Trump, and what she revealed is far from the usual praise and admiration he often receives. For some, her words came as a shock, but the real question is why now? And what exactly did she say that caught the world's attention? Stay with me because by the end of this story, you may be stunned, you may agree completely, or you may be left wondering why. Before we dive into this captivating story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss any of our exclusive stories about power, wealth, and the hidden truths behind the world's most talked about figures. This story goes much deeper than it seems. Tiffany grew up in California, the only child from the marriage between Marla Maples and Donald Trump, who tied the knot in 1993 but divorced in 1999. Their breakup was splashed across the headlines, a media storm that left Marla to start over with young Tiffany in Calabasas, California. Life there could not have been more different from the glittering, fast-paced world of Tiffany's half-siblings in New York. While Donald's older children grew up in Manhattan surrounded by skyscrapers, billion-dollar deals, and the relentless energy of their father's empire, Tiffany's childhood belonged to another world entirely. Picture this, a spacious home with a wide backyard, a trampoline, and quiet days spent in the California sun. It was a life that reminded Marla of her own southern roots in Georgia. If New York symbolized ambition, and steel Calabasas represented fresh air, calm, and simplicity. And that was exactly the childhood Marla dreamed of giving her daughter. Through it all, Tiffany stayed silent, perhaps too silent. During her father's presidency and the controversies that followed, she rarely stepped into the spotlight content to remain in the background. But now she has spoken, breaking that silence with a statement that could forever alter the way the world sees Donald Trump. What did she reveal, and why does it cut so deep? This you will want to hear. Marla didn't just raise Tiffany, she made it her mission to give her daughter something priceless, a normal whole childhood. You know how so many celebrity kids grow up in a bubble, completely detached from reality? Marla was determined Tiffany would never fall into that trap. She worked tirelessly not only to create calm around her daughter, but to build a life that was warm, balanced, and truly healthy. Their everyday routines were simple but intentional. 5 nights a week meant home-cooked organic dinners, no exceptions. Tiffany played tennis, spent hours outdoors, and stayed active again, no exceptions. There were even humanitarian trips to places like Malawi, where Tiffany learned firsthand that life was so much bigger than privilege. And of course, there were their special mother-daughter traditions like cozy movie nights that created a bond that time itself couldn't break. Tiffany's childhood was gentler than that of her Trump siblings. But let's be clear, it was not without privilege. She attended the elite Viewpoint School with tuition running nearly $30,000 a year, hardly an ordinary high school experience. Still, Marla fought to keep Tiffany's life grounded, even as she brushed shoulders with circles of immense wealth and influence. Marla's goal was crystal clear. She wanted Tiffany to discover who she was, not just live as Donald Trump's daughter. And Tiffany understood that. In her own words, "My mom took us out of New York to get me away from the spotlight so I could grow up and find my own identity instead of living in the shadow of a name." By design, Marla gave Tiffany room to grow beyond her father's larger-than-life presence. Don't get the wrong idea, Tiffany and her father were never estranged. Even though she grew up across the country, she maintained a relationship with Donald. But it wasn't the kind of bond built on every weekend visits. Their time together was planned deliberate. Tiffany would travel to New York, stay at Trump Tower, share meals with her father and Melania, and catch glimpses of her half-siblings' fast-paced Manhattan lives. To his credit, Donald did show up for the big moments. School events, award ceremonies, milestones, he often flew out to California just to be there. Of course, with his relentless schedule, he couldn't be present for the smaller everyday things. But Marla worked hard to keep father and daughter connected despite the distance. What's remarkable is how carefully Marla handled this balance. She never let her personal feelings toward Donald interfere with Tiffany's bond with him. And honestly, that's impressive. Divorces can so easily turn toxic. But not here. She never badmouthed him, never pushed her own judgments onto Tiffany. As Marla once admitted, she had a father who provided well for her education and everything, but when it came to the day-to-day, it was just me. It was a quiet acknowledgement that while Donald handled the finances, she was the one raising Tiffany moment by moment. Yet despite the distance and the different worlds they lived in, Marla made sure Tiffany had the freedom to shape her own perspective of her father. I just felt it was important that she build her own relationship with him without me interfering. Marla once explained, and truthfully, that might be one of the healthiest approaches to co-parenting you could ever hope for in a situation like theirs. So year after year, holiday after holiday, Tiffany divided her time, half of it spent in the quiet rhythm of life on the West Coast, with her mother and the other half inside the whirlwind of Trump Tower in Mar-a-Lago. It was without question a unique kind of childhood. While Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric were raised completely immersed in the machinery of their father's brand, Tiffany's story unfolded very differently. Hers was a world where independence, self-discovery, and the pursuit of something resembling normal life mattered more than power and legacy. And for that, she had Marla Maples to thank, a mother who willingly stepped out of the spotlight so that her daughter could shine in her own way when she was truly ready. That moment came during the campaign. When Donald Trump's 2016 presidential run reached its peak, Tiffany suddenly found herself stepping into a world she had never truly belonged to before the public eye of politics, with its endless media attention and scrutiny. Unlike Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric, who had been at the center of their father's business and public image for years, Tiffany had largely remained on the sidelines. But 2016 changed that. She began making carefully planned appearances, joining the campaign with a polished yet understated style. It was as though she had stepped into the picture, but entirely on her own terms. One of her earliest public moments came at a White House event for the Wounded Warrior Project. It wasn't a flashy, headline-grabbing occasion, and that was exactly the point. Tiffany wasn't trying to be the face of the campaign, nor was she delivering soaring political speeches. Instead, she quietly stood beside her father, showing her support in a deliberate but subtle way. It was clear Tiffany had found her rhythm, not aiming to become a political sensation, but also not retreating from the spotlight entirely. And if there was one thing people noticed about her during the campaign, it was her striking sense of fashion. On the surface, it may have seemed trivial. After all, campaigns aren't runways. But for Tiffany, her wardrobe became a subtle form of self-expression, a language of its own. She often turned to Chinese designer Taorei Wang, making his creations her signature look for pivotal moments. Tiffany wore Wang's designs to campaign debates, election night, and even the inauguration. It was a deliberate choice. While her siblings gravitated toward traditional American designers, Tiffany's wardrobe carried an international edge, blending elegance with just a touch of bold individuality. Perhaps it was simply her personal style, or maybe it was her way of carving out an identity within a family where even the choice of clothing could be seen as a political statement. Whatever the reason, it became her signature, and people undoubtedly noticed. Yet what the public couldn't see was that the campaign trail had given Tiffany something far more meaningful: precious time with her father. Before 2016, Tiffany's bond with Donald was distant compared to her siblings, largely because they grew up in different worlds. But during those endless flights and the constant shuffle from one rally stop to another, she and her father found rare private moments away from cameras, away from crowds, away from the relentless noise of politics. Then came the 2016 Republican National Convention. This was Tiffany's defining moment. For anyone who wondered where she fit within the Trump political dynasty, her speech was the answer. And she didn't try to become someone else. Unlike Don Jr., who delivered a fiery political rallying cry, or Ivanka, who polished her words like a corporate pitch, Tiffany chose to stay authentic. She spoke of how her father inspired her to strive for excellence, nurtured her growth, and carried a gift for drawing out the best in people. It was a softer, more intimate glimpse of the man behind the larger-than-life image. There were no aggressive talking points, no controversial sound bites, just a daughter speaking about her father. The approach was both strategic and deeply genuine. But by 2020, Tiffany's message had evolved. She was no longer merely paying tribute. She was stepping directly into the political arena. Her RNC speech that year urged voters to look beyond party lines and judge leaders by results, not rhetoric. She also took a sharp stance on media and technology, warning that people's opinions, thoughts, and even their votes were being manipulated in plain sight. This was not the same Tiffany from 4 years earlier. Whether it was growing comfort in the political spotlight or a stronger desire to assert her views, one thing was undeniable: she was no longer the quiet, stylish Trump daughter. She was speaking out. For years, Donald Trump's closeness to Ivanka, Eric, and Don Jr. was evident, while his bond with Tiffany remained a mystery. Finally, Tiffany began to reveal what truly unfolded behind closed doors, and what she shared was eye-opening. Could this be the turning point that reshaped everything within the Trump family life inside the presidency had just begun? The bond between Donald Trump and Tiffany has shifted dramatically over the years, especially during his presidency. At first, their relationship appeared steady, almost untouched by the political storm surrounding the family. But as time passed, a quiet distance grew between them. They still exchanged the occasional phone call, yet there were long stretches, sometimes entire months, when silence defined their connection. Tiffany's first meaningful step into Washington life came when she attended a Wounded Warrior Project event. It wasn't a grand debut, no dazzling speech, no headlines screaming her name. Instead, it was a quiet, almost humble appearance, simply showing up to support her father's initiatives. In many ways, that moment encapsulated her entire role during those years. She wasn't a political figure, not someone pushing policies or stirring controversy. Tiffany appeared when it mattered, but never sought constant attention. While her siblings stood in the spotlight at rallies and political stages, commanding crowds and delivering speeches, she was elsewhere, immersed in her law studies at Georgetown. That alone was a remarkable feat, pursuing her own ambitions while carrying the Trump name. Despite the relentless media gaze on her as the president's daughter, Tiffany carved out her own space separate from the political whirlwind consuming her family. But then in 2019, the spotlight found her in the harshest of ways. A White House aide, Madeleine Westerhout, carelessly made a cruel remark, hinting that Trump avoided being photographed with Tiffany because of her appearance. Imagine hearing something like that about your own father from someone within his inner circle. The media seized on it, exploding it into a scandal. Trump scrambled to contain the fallout, declaring publicly, "I love Tiffany." But the damage was already done. Fair or not, the incident left people questioning how close their bond truly was. Yet through it all, Tiffany continued to step forward when duty called. In 2020, she took the stage at the Republican National Convention once again. But this time, her tone was different. Gone were the warm, personal anecdotes she had shared in 2016. Instead, Tiffany delivered a sharper message, openly warning about media bias and manipulation. She condemned how the press shaped public opinion and urged people to think critically for themselves. It was her boldest, most unflinching stance yet. Unlike Ivanka, who often spoke of her father in a tender and personal way, Tiffany always chose a more formal tone. She didn't recount touching father-daughter stories, nor did she paint Donald Trump as the endlessly loving dad. Instead, her words stayed focused on his policies, and that in itself revealed more than it seemed. Though she wasn't always present in the White House, Tiffany still made time to be with her family when it truly mattered. She spent holidays at Mar-a-Lago, and even if she didn't constantly share family updates, Ivanka often made sure Tiffany appeared in social media posts about Trump gatherings. Clearly, Tiffany wasn't deeply invested in politics, but neither was she completely detached. She managed to show up while still keeping her independence intact. In a family where public loyalty often feels like a duty, Tiffany found a way to exist without being overexposed. That was no small achievement, especially with a surname that has always drawn relentless scrutiny. For years, she was the quietest Trump, deliberately stepping away from the spotlight as her father dominated the headlines. But now she has finally spoken out, and what she revealed about Donald Trump has set off a storm of speculation. What did she say, and why did it come as such a shock? This changed everything. It shifted the very perception of their relationship. For Tiffany, her bond with her father has always been one of the most intriguing dynamics in the Trump family. Unlike her siblings, who grew up deeply intertwined with their father's business empire and later his political world, Tiffany was raised at a deliberate distance from the public eye. Her mother, Marla Maples, gave her a quieter, more private childhood. But in 2024 and 2025, the narrative shifted in ways no one anticipated. With Ivanka retreating from politics and Eric, alongside Don Jr., doubling down on public loyalty, Tiffany began stepping into a new role, one that reflected both her love for her father and her desire to protect her own identity. It was a delicate balance, something difficult for anyone in a family so closely tied to power. Take the Republican convention in Milwaukee in early 2025, for example. What was expected to be just another political event, just another stage in the Trump brand machine, became something else entirely when Tiffany took her place on that stage. But that moment revealed something far deeper. As Tiffany walked toward her father, her face lit up with a gentle smile, her arms open, ready for an embrace. Yet something felt slightly off. Perhaps it was the awkward timing, perhaps the cameras that captured every flicker of expression, or perhaps it was the unspoken truth of their complicated past, now unfolding under the eyes of the world. Whatever it was, Tiffany handled it with grace. She steadied herself, quickly collected her emotions, and returned quietly to her seat beside her husband, Michael Boulos. That fleeting moment spoke volumes. It painted a portrait of a daughter who stood by her father, supportive, yet striving to carve out her own space in his world. And this was not just an isolated instant. Tiffany's increasing visibility within her father's political orbit had already stirred conversations. She delivered speeches at rallies, appeared at pivotal campaign events, and even gave an emotional address in Reading, Pennsylvania, where she declared, "Hello, we love you. We stand with you, and my father is here fighting for you, and he will never let you down." It was a bold statement, but what truly captivated people was not the words themselves. It was the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't reading a script. She wasn't improvising aimlessly. She was present, fully engaged, and deeply authentic. Whether at the Detroit Economic Club, where Trump proudly announced her pregnancy while praising her as an exceptional young woman, or at the Pittsburgh rally, where he openly reflected on the ways his children had supported him at different levels, Tiffany has begun to leave her own mark. Behind the scenes, insiders say that Trump's children, Tiffany included, have developed a growing trust in his current circle of political advisors like never before. This shift has created a more genuine, more relaxed bond between them. No longer were they simply characters in a political performance. They were beginning to explore what their relationship truly meant beyond the dazzling spotlight of a campaign. For Tiffany, this balance, supporting her father while remaining authentic, was never easy. But lately it seems she has begun to find her rhythm. At its core, this story is not just about politics or public appearances. It is about a daughter who spent years defining herself outside her father's shadow, slowly finding her way back to him on her own terms. And it is about a father who, beneath all the bravado and spectacle, seems to genuinely value the daughter who once stood quietly at the margins of his world. At its heart, this is the ever-changing truth about family, the way bonds evolve, priorities shift, and how in the end, what truly matters is rarely what makes the loudest noise. Tiffany Trump may never have been the boldest or the brightest star of the Trump family, and perhaps deep down that was exactly how she wished it to be. Yet one thing is undeniable: her relationship with her father has changed. And in a world where every move is watched, every silence interpreted, that quiet shift is something worth remembering. And so we reach the end of today's story. Thank you for being here, for watching and listening. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartfelt journeys ahead. And to keep exploring these untold chapters, simply click on the next video that's waiting for you on the screen.